I've been trying to complete my form decks for almost a year, and I'm surprised it's taken till now for me to start thinking about taking a break. So I decided to take on a different challenge, and that was to touch grass. Or as normal people would put it, going camping. But obviously, I have an addiction, so I'm going to turn it into an actual challenge by giving myself 24 hours, well, just over a day, but that's near enough, to try and catch a shiny Pokemon. This would only be a challenge though if I tried to avoid using some of the quicker methods introduced in the more recent games. So for the arbitrary rules of this pointless challenge, I only win if I have at least one shiny Pokemon by the time I pack everything up and head home. And a shiny only counts if it's a target that I specifically set out to get before starting the hunt. This means that if I phase and find a different shiny Pokemon that I'm looking for, then I still have to keep going until my target is the one shining on the screen. And it goes without saying, if I somehow don't find any, then I'll have failed and I'll have to travel home in shame. So that's it, nice and simple. Let's get the show on the road. And I mean that quite literally because I need to get on the road as well. Or at least I would be getting on the road if I didn't have to check everything a second and third time before packing it all in the car, so that I wouldn't leave myself with a potential soft lock on my hands. You see, I'm not going glamping, which means I'm not going to have any way to charge my Switch, my camera, or even my phone. So I went around collecting all the power banks I owned, along with the obvious things like a tent, a sleeping bag, and other essentials. Chucked them in my bag, loaded the car, and set off on the way to hunt some shiny Pokemon. After about a 2-hour drive and some typical English weather threatening me with rain along the way, I finally arrived at the campsite. Now, before I could start grinding out the first hunt, I had to set up the tent and unpack everything so that I could settle in and decide which Pokemon I was actually going to be searching for. The first target is possibly the most important choice I'm going to have to make, because this is the only time I can fail this challenge purely just by choosing incorrectly. But, and you know what I'm going to say if you've seen my other videos, so say it with me now, I hate myself. So this immediately meant I was going to try and avoid using Sparkle and Power Sandwiches in Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. And I also added Pokeradar hunting in BDSP to this list, since it could take a while, but based on my experience when I streamed this method for another video, it seemed almost guaranteed that I'd find a shiny in the time limit. And lastly, I wanted to use some of the methods that are more unique to each game, so no Masuda method breeding either. With those out the way, I can get on to some of the things I'd like to try and include in my hunts, which is only actually one thing really, and that's that I'd like the hunt to take place in a forest, given that well, actually in a forest. So the areas I was looking at based off the games I had with me are the Viridian Forest in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, the Slumbering World and Glimwood Tangle in Sword and Shield, Eterna Forest in BDSP, part of the Obsidian Fieldlands in Legends Arceus, Tagtree Thicket and the Bamboo Forest in Scarlet and Violet, as well as some of the other unnamed forested areas in those games as well. Knowing all this, I could narrow down my list of choices, and honestly, other than what I've already been over, I didn't actually put all that much more thought into the specific hunt other than what game it had been the longest since I'd found a shiny in, and that happened to be in Sword and Shield, which I last hunted the Wooloo line in from a shiny deck series. With this choice made, I just went to the first location on the list and picked the first Pokemon I encountered. And as I headed into the Slumbering World, the first Pokemon I ran into was Squovit. Now for the hunt method I was using for this, I went with the one I was most familiar with, which was the KO method, which, to sum it up as simply as possible, basically just means I have to knock out at least 25 Squovit in a row and aim for 500 total knockouts to give myself the best possible odds. And that should leave me with a 1 in 876 chance for a normal Pokemon. Or if it happens to be glowing, it'll have a 1 in 456 chance of being shiny. Now these odds both include the shiny charm because I worked for it, so I was going to use it. Hopefully that all makes sense, but I can't put it off any longer. So let's use what's left of the day to get this hunt started. And you may or not believe me when I say this, but I didn't find a shiny on the first night. I know, shocking. But on to the next day, I was up bright and early, or at least just early, because to no one's surprise, I went camping in the UK and it rained all night and all morning. To try and make the most of it though, I woke my Switch up as well and continued the hunt while I waited for the rain to stop. And with the soothing sound of the rain hitting the side of the tent sending me into a shiny hunting zen state, the encounters were coming thick and fast. and so was my hunger. So I took a short break to make myself some breakfast and quickly ran out of ways to try and make knocking out the same Pokemon over and over again sound interesting. I wasn't having the best of luck, and by the time the rain had stopped, I was mentally drained after focusing on purely shiny hunting and nothing else all morning. So in an effort to remotivate myself and get rid of any paranoia building up that I'd forgotten some vital information about the KO method, I went for a walk to clear my head and search for somewhere that I could get phone signal to double check that what I knew was correct. And that seemed to work because by the time I got back, I was ready and confident that everything I was doing was right, and I just had to power through the encounters until I saw the little pink squirrel on my screen. Getting back into the swing of things, I started by cooking up some curry, both for my character and for me in real life, to try and get some kind of full synchronization between the two of us. And I think it worked because I was re-energized and prepared to continue with the hunt. On the theme of preparation, I got myself into a comfy position in the tent, ready for the worst to happen, which was basically just if it started raining again. It was at this point that my foresight was going to pay off, since my Switch was in need of some re-energizing itself. So, with a full stomach, charged battery, a massive dose of copium, and severely lowered expectations for this camping trip, I was sure I was going to at least find the magenta chipmunk I was looking for. Even as the sun started to go down and I was coming very close to going over odds, I was still fully confident that I wasn't going to fail this challenge. Partially due to my stubbornness, since I wouldn't let myself go to sleep until I saw that rodent sparkle. But I've been at this for so long that both me and my Switch were running low on battery again. My only choice though was to power through and just swap to the second battery I brought with me to give myself some more time. But as it got later into the night, there was only so much my stubbornness could keep me awake. Until it happened. The cheeky little maroon tree rat was finally on my screen in its full glory. But wait, why is it on my side of the field? Well, to explain what happened and give you a ton of reasons as to why I did this. I was woken up super early, went on a hike when I needed to clear my head, and it was Sunday at this point, so I was very close to being awake for a full 24 hours. So it should go without saying that I needed sleep at this point. In an act of mercy to myself, I swallowed my pride and booted up Scarlet, made a late night snack consisting of bread, tomato, onion, green pepper, 6 blocks of tofu, a hamburger, and a sparkler. Definitely a bit heavy for this time of night, but it did give me Sparkle and Power level 3 for normal Pokemon. But before you say it, I know what you might be thinking. Hang on a minute, doesn't that break the arbitrary rules you made up for the challenge at the beginning of the video? And depending on how you want to look at it, maybe it does, but if we actually go back to see what I said, I hate myself. So this immediately meant I was going to try and avoid using Sparkle and Power sandwiches in Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. I never specifically ruled out the use of this method in the challenge, although the joke's on me because with the first sandwich, I didn't find the rouge-faced nut holder. Instead, I found 2 hot pink piglets. These would be a nice addition to my shiny decks, but unfortunately, they weren't my target, so they wouldn't count. Onto my second sandwich, and I found yet another piece of living, breathing, uncooked ham, which, again, I couldn't be angry with because this was the last one I needed to complete the evolution line. Now, that was lucky, but on top of this, not too long afterwards, I finally saw the puffy red tail of the mini menace that had been eluding me all weekend. And in a single Pokeball, I'd claim a target, and I could turn off the light and finally get some sleep. Whether this counts as not failing a challenge, I'll leave that up to you. But after a solid night's sleep with no rain to interrupt my much needed rest, I knew I had to at least try and finish the hunt I started in Sword and Shield. So with my last battery plugged in and breakfast on the go, I gave him my best shot in the remaining time I had left to find the squishy boy with the rosy cheeks. This was a fruitless endeavour sadly, and soon it was time to pack everything up and head back home. I was happy to count this as a win personally, even with the loophole I had to use, but the thought of leaving the hunt unfinished and the shiny unclaimed kept playing on my head all the way home. In the spirit of not letting this defeat me, I sent the hunt into overtime and kept it going once I got back. This was both for personal reasons and to give it a bit of perspective on how quick some of the hunting methods in the more recent games actually are. Continuing with the measures I took up to control the grey squirrel population in the slumbering world, It went way over 1,000 encounters before I ran into a shiny. Rookidee? Yeah, so I faced on this one by accidentally running into a Rookidee that spawned in the overworld. We'll just throw it in with the other Pokemon that I'm not looking for and try not to have a repeat of what just happened. Continuing on, after 1,663 encounters, which is more than the Pokedex will actually count up to, it happened again. But it wasn't a Rookidee or any other shiny Pokemon. No, I'd actually found the target I was looking for in the area I set out to find it in. Now, if we look back, this took multiple days of squeezing in encounters when possible to only find 2 Pokemon, obviously including the Rookidee I faced on. This is painfully slow compared to the 4 shiny Pokemon I found in an hour using Sparkle and Power Sandwiches in Scarlet and Violet. Don't get me wrong, this isn't to say one method is better than the other, and I definitely enjoy the distinct charm that each of them have. It's more just to put into perspective what kind of hunt you may want to do yourself, or even just what hunt you personally have time to finish. Although this is all with the caveat that it's all up to RNG at the end of the day. Finishing off with the Lechonka Court all evolved into the correct forms, I just want to thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, share it about with anyone who will listen. Like, subscribe, I have other videos, I have a Twitch channel, and I guess